This video is going to go over virtual machines and their function in penetration testing. A virtual machine is a computer file that works like an actual computer. They run in what's called a sandbox environment, meaning that what happens in the virtual machine stays in the virtual machine. And with the right hardware, multiple virtual machines can run on a file at the same time. Today we're going to be covering creating a virtual machine, and although I do have some available for download, it's an important concept to learn. First, we're going to go to www.kali.org. This is the Linux version that we'll be using for the penetration testing. What you want to do here is either download from the HTTP or from the torrent if you have a good torrent program available. You can also verify your download was done properly by checking the sum right here in the SHA-256. Once that's downloaded, we're going to install the virtual machine workstation player software. Now you could just type this into Google, and what you want to do is go to the first one available, which is right here, download VMware Workstation Player. I already have this installed, so I'm not going to actually do the process myself, but you want to get it for Windows. If you're running Linux, you can also get it for Linux as well. Please do note though, if you create a virtual machine in Workstation Player 14, it will not work on VMware Workstation Player 12, which is the primary version that Cal State Dominguez Hills is using at the moment. Once you have both programs, the ISO downloaded and the VMware Workstation Player installed, you want to create your virtual machine. To do that, open up your VMware Workstation Player software and click Create a New Virtual Machine. Here, it's going to ask you a couple of things. The first thing is where the ISO is located. So browse to the location on your computer and click Open. Next, it's going to ask you what type of guest operating system will be used. In this situation, we're going to go with Linux, and specifically Kali Linux is not listed in any of these here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use another Linux kernel that's a 3.4 64-bit, as long as you download the 64-bit ISO, which I recommend. You can give your virtual machine any name that you want, so what I'm going to call this one is just going to be Kali Core. This way I know that there's no modifications made to it and this is the default environment that it should be. I also recommend that whenever you're creating a virtual machine, after this has been done, to create a copy of it somewhere else, because as you make changes, if something goes wrong, there's really not a way to undo the changes that you've done unless you've done a really good job of documenting. So in this situation, what you would want to do is just start from scratch without having to recreate. So just copy your folder that this is going to create, and I'll show you guys where that happens, and into a different location. That way you can easily reopen it. The maximum disk size, you can put whatever you want in this situation. Usually with Linux, what I will do is between 15 to 20 gigabytes, depending on how much information we're looking to store. I really don't recommend anything more than that. Now what's important here is that if you'll notice, we're only working with 768 megabytes of RAM, and we definitely want to change that. So what you want to do is click Customize Hardware, and there's a few things that we will change. The first thing is giving the system more RAM. It depends on how much your computer is working with. So I've got 16 gigabytes here, so I'll give it 4. Next is the number of processors. So what we'll do here is change the processors from 1 to 4. I do have a quad-core processor. This will depend based off of the hardware that you're running. Once that's done, you're going to hit Finish. And now you'll see I have a Kali Core virtual machine. The state is powered off. The operating system is other type of Linux kernel. And what we're going to do now is just hit Play Virtual Machine. What this will do is this will actually boot up as if we're setting it up for the first time. So you might hear a little bit of a noise like that. That's fine. So instead of going with the live, we're going to do a graphical install. Now what you'll notice is once I clicked on here, my mouse disappeared. In any kind of VMware software, to get back to your host system, because as I'm moving my mouse around, you can't see it on the screen. You hit Control and Alt at the same time and just let go and your mouse reappears. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to graphical install, that way we can use the mouse. And depending on your display, especially the ultra high definition displays, this first menu is going to be very small. Once you get into the operating system, you can change your display size, which will be a lot easier then. So choose the language that you want, pretty straightforward here. United States, we're going to do American English. And it'll go through and install some of these components. Again, depending on the type of hardware that you're running, this can take anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. Solid state drives obviously will install really quickly to get this whole process done. All right, now we're going to give it a host name. I usually just keep it as the straight Kali name here. Domain name, we're not creating any kind of domain in this situation, so just hit continue. And now it's going to ask you to create a password. You can create just the default password for now. So I'm just going to make it password. Obviously, if this was a legitimate system, I wouldn't use this. And I'll make mine Pacific time. This all depends on your time zone. And what's really great about this is that it will take your internet service, and right now I'm using a wireless internet, and it'll configure it into a hardline Ethernet. So you'll automatically pass through the Ethernet from here. Here we're going to just use the entire disk space. This will use up the 16 gigabytes or the 15 gigabytes that I gave it. And what I do here is just put all files in one partition. It's just easier to do. What you want to do now is all the partitioning is done. You've created the different types of files that the system needs, and we're just going to hit continue. Now this pop-up that showed up on the bottom, this is the tools that are available with VMware Player. What happens is VMware will use, again, since it's like its own operating system, the RAM that's allocated for VMware Player is separate than the RAM that's allocated for your outside system. So let's say I'm trying to copy and paste something from outside of the virtual machine into the virtual machine. By default, it can't do that. So if you install these tools, it gives you a couple of those options available where something copied and pasted from outside the virtual machine can be put inside the virtual machine. Typically, though, people don't install these. So I'm just going to click Remind Me Later for now. And click Write Changes to the disks. And this will go through the installation process. All right, now over here, it's asking if you want to use the network mirror to supplement any software. That's not included. Over here, I always put no. The grub bootloader is what's going to allow everything to boot properly. So hit continue. Now here, you want to just use what they've already provided for you, the dev SDA. All right, so the installation is done, and hit continue. This will reboot your system and test. You'll pretty much get to test here to make sure that everything works properly. All right, so once that's done, just hit enter, and you are in your Kali Linux virtual machine that you created. Sometimes with different versions of Linux, it can get stuck at this boot process. If that ever happens, just hold Control and push C. But that's pretty much it. Just want to test to make sure that everything worked well. So we're going to log in as root, because remember when we went through the creating virtual machine, we created a root login. So I'm going to make this root here. And then for the password, it's going to be insecure password. For my Kali image that I've uploaded to the website, I believe I did make it as insecure. So the password is all lowercase insecure. All right, and there we go. We have a working virtual machine. So this is a computer within a computer. I'm going to be going over more of Kali Linux, obviously, in future videos, but I just wanted to show everyone how to create a virtual machine. Just make sure whenever you turn these off to go and shut down your guest. So go to power off, and once that's done, your virtual machine will be done. The last thing I wanted to cover today is where your virtual machine gets stored. I didn't put a specific location. However, that is something that you can do during the installation process. By default, it's going to go to wherever your documents are. So in this situation, in my documents, there, I have a virtual machines folder. And unless I specify, all of my virtual machines are going to get stored into here. So As you'll see, this one that I created today is Kali Core, and all of the files are available here. So what you can do as a backup, just to make sure that everything was done properly, is you can copy this and paste it somewhere else, like your desktop or a specific folder that you've created for your virtual machines in a different directory. And that way you don't have to worry about messing anything up and having it completely lost and having to go through this whole creation process. That's it for now. The next video we will go into creating what's called a live boot.